My presentation is entitled Law and Order, Ronald Reagan's Civil Religion. My name is Olgierd Madejski. I am a student of Pedagogical University of Krakow, student of sociology in the Institute of Philosophy and Sociology, soon to be Institute of Sociology, and I am also a member of Sociology Science Club. Why the question mark after law and order, and why law and order? Well, it's kind of a wordplay, because as you can see on the right side of the screen, Law and Order is a title of a movie in which Ronald Reagan played the main role back in the days when he was still an actor, not a politician. And why the question mark? Well, in the movie, he utilized a very specific tool. He utilized a gun, which was very effective. And as a president, well, he didn't exactly use guns, but he used tools as effective as the guns that he used in the movies. And my main focus today is to showcase the fact that those tools he used, mainly populism and civil religion, were very effective, just as effective as if he was using mentioned guns. In the dictionary authored by Tomasz Karpowicz, populism is described as promoting catchy, politically or economically aligned slogans that put forward simple and usually demagogic proposals to solve complex problems in order to gain social support. Well, this dictionary definition perfectly fits the style of the governance of Ronald Reagan. Engaging in populist policies domestically and internationally is one of the main criticisms against the 40th President of the United States. Despite the pejorative connotation of the term populism, actions with populist characteristics are commonly utilized in politics with varying degrees of success. Reagan made them a fundamental tool for his administration, using them cautiously and consciously. In the early stages of his political career, Reagan positioned himself as an average citizen. At the end of his second term as a president, in his farewell speech, he emphasized that his political career was that of a citizen politician, as you can see in this quote from his farewell speech at the end of his second term as a president. He focused primarily on aiming to limit the harmful influence of the government and the expanding legal and tax system on the everyday lives of ordinary citizens. The motive of opposing and fighting against the influence of an external force was a leading theme throughout Reagan's political career. Initially, while he was still a supporter of the Democratic Party, Reagan referred to elites and greedy corporations exploiting their workers as this external force. Later, he shifted this role to the government, which, according to the 40th President of the USA, overly interfered in citizens' lives. As a California governor, Reagan distanced himself from the federal government, referring to it as they. He labeled protesting students as foul-mouthed students demonstrators and university authorities as ivory tower leaders. Reagan used populism for political gain before and during his presidency, but most importantly, he skillfully employed it during his time in office. As a president, he replaced confrontational language with conciliatory tones, which can be seen in his inaugural speech. Reagan, known as a great communicator, adapted his style to connect with his audience. Early in his presidency, he persuaded the House to pass the Economic Recovery Act of 1981, one of the most important most significant changes to American tax system, and he persuaded the House with strong representation of the Democratic Party. Perry Bimes characterizes Reagan's subsequent actions as hybrid application of populism. During speeches directed at the entire nation, Reagan solidified his position as the head of a state, a president of all Americans. This required refraining from populist attacks on the Democratic Party and adopting a somewhat gentler approach toward political opponents. The pattern of using populist references is quite different in interactions with narrower audience. When addressing his supporters, the 40th President of the USA employed simplified and direct comparisons, gaining even more of their sympathy. Depending on the audience, Reagan struck different tones. This duality of his image is aptly captured by Terry Bimes' term soft cell populist. If the measure of effectiveness of populist policy is obtaining the support of the majority, then Reagan's victory in 1984 presidential election is proof of how well and effectively he wielded this tool. And this is the map and the 1984 presidential election results map by state. He won in almost every single one of the states. Of course, the system in the USA of voting for presidents is very different. But yes, his win was very, let's say, dominating. Okay, so populism connects strongly with the theme of appealing to moral issues and dividing the world into good and evil. Reagan's speeches portrayed the American nation as a chosen guardian of righteous values. He used biblical references drawing from religious sermons to position himself with moral superiority, which made his demands just. Although his speeches resembled religious sermons, they couldn't rely on religious sources due to a separation of religion and power in the USA. Instead, terms like ceremonial discourse and civil religion highlight the secular nature of Reagan's rhetoric. Rhetoric rooted in American politics and its foundational documents. Reagan treated the rights enshrined in these documents as indisputable. Through their general nature, though their general nature required interpretation, and in this field he also left no room for debate, asserting his interpretation as the only correct one. Comparisons to religious rhetorics are therefore justified. Reagan found inspiration in a book containing what he believed was unalterable laws and considered himself and his followers as interpreting in the only proper and conservative way. What you can see now on the screen is a quote from his speech, from Reagan's speech in front of National Association of Evangelicals, one of the most significant and important speeches of Reagan, in which he called USSR an evil empire, which proves that he saw a moral superiority in the American nation. And one of the most important examples of how he employed populism and how he saw himself and his followers as moral superiors to others is the topic of abortion. Ronald Reagan was a Presbyterian church member. He publicly identified as a believer, and likely he had religious Protestant-rooted values, values that influenced his conservative governance and strong anti-abortion stance. Though Reagan criticized abortion from a constitutional rights perspective rather than a biblical one, his Christian ethics shaped this interpretation. By framing abortion as a matter of constitutional interpretation, Reagan redirected the debate onto a familiar ground. He believed abortion violated a right to live, which he saw as the basis for other rights, sidelining women's rights in the discussion and emphasizing fetal rights. Well, he actually notably avoided using the term fetus, opting for phrases like unborn, living human being, life of each person before birth, or America's unborn children. Emphasizing the humanity of the fetus equated abortion with murder. Reagan often cited cases of women who choose not to have an abortion, stating that they choose life, implying that women of opting for abortion were choosing death. Reagan's discourse on abortion often reduced women to motherhood, downplaying their right to decide about their own bodies. And well, this perspective, somewhat skewed, constructed a world when abortion wasn't about women deciding about their bodies, but about taking away a chance for happiness through motherhood. This rhetoric, including the phrase America's unborn children, shifted decision-making responsibility to society, undermining bodily autonomy by presenting abortion as a threat to society itself. Reagan skillfully reframed the issue to his advantage, leaning on emotions rather than facts. While he briefly mentioned supporting evidence, Reagan leaned on a common sense over scientific proof, urging to err on the side of life in the absence of conclusive evidence about fetal humanity. Reagan's approach underscored his unwavering pursuit of goals and belief in his right to decide citizens' fates, though his claim to represent the entire nation was debatable. His inability to grasp the opposing side was evident, and he implied compromise meant opponents abandoning their beliefs. The example of the abortion discussion clearly illustrates how Reagan utilized populist tactics and harnessed what is known as a civil religion to further his own agenda. In his rhetoric, Reagan referenced American political tradition, constitutional values, and US law as if they were the source of immutable, almost sacred rights. It's worth noting that he appealed to his own interpretations of these aspects, but this is a textbook example of leveraging civil religion for one's own political objectives. In conclusion, Ronald Reagan's skillful utilization of populist strategies, both domestically and internationally, marked his presidency. Despite the pejorative connotation of populism, Reagan effectively employed simplified and emotionally resonant language to connect with different audiences. His approach allowed him to present himself as a unifying figure on the national stage, while catering to the sympathies of his supporters with direct comparisons and catchy slogans. This duality contributed to his success, exemplified by his victory in the 1984 presidential election. Reagan's rhetoric also extended to addressing moral issues, where he painted the American nation as a guardian of righteous values. Though he couldn't overly rely on religious sources, his speeches drew from religious sermons, emphasizing the secular nature of his discourse rooted in American political ideals. Furthermore, his stance on abortion revealed a complex interplay between his religious values, his constitutional interpretation, and his belief in representing the nation's moral compass. His framing of abortion highlighted his emphasis on the humanity of the unborn and his adeptness at using emotionally charged language to support his position, even if it marginalized women's autonomy. In both his populist strategies and moral appeals, Reagan demonstrated his capacity to adapt his communication style to connect with various audiences. His presidency stands as a notable example of how political rhetoric, when skillfully deployed, can shape public perception and policy outcomes. The moral assessment of such actions remained beyond the scope of my speech today. Thank you for your attention. I would like to add one more thing, as there are 2 more minutes left. These are my sources, and most of them, actually, almost all of them are from American authors, as it should be, because Reagan here in Poland is worshipped for playing a key role in ending what was a, let's say, authoritarian communist dominance in this part of the world. And yes, he played a key role in doing so, but his presidency wasn't without flaws, and it's hard to find those flaws in a text of Polish authors, as Reagan seems to be some kind of hero, a man who helped ending the communist state here in Poland. The thing is that he hated communism, of course, but oftentimes Polish authors don't see the importance of domestic policies